All right, we're going to go to the Supreme Court now, and Kevin Cirilli, our chief Washington correspondent, who is outside the Supreme Court, to give us some of the ramifications of this decision.
Yeah, this is a big victory for Republicans fighting against unions. This is a Supreme Court ruling against labor. The Supreme Court ultimately ruling that there is a freedom of speech First Amendment argument right that non-union workers do not have to pay for these agency fees to unions for collective bargaining. This is a major loss for big labor. This was something that they felt was able to help them raise revenue. And this is just the latest case that goes against big labor. We should note that the First Amendment argument that the Supreme Court heard really does overturn a 1977 case. So again, big loss for big labor and a win for Republicans who have fought against this, including the Illinois Governor Bruce Rauner, who is up for re-election in Illinois. The ruling 5-4.
Yeah, it's fascinating because there's really just 5 states, and they account for nearly half of America's total union members in public unions: California, New York, Pennsylvania, Illinois, one of the big ones, and Ohio. Let's bring in Bloomberg's David Westin as well, obviously host of Balance of Power and also of our morning programming. David, this is a big blow to unions, to the union movement.
Yeah, as you said, not unexpected, but a big blow, particularly to public unions, which are the ones that really have been growing as opposed to private unions have been shrinking. I mean, as we know, some states already provided for this by statute. We had right-to-work states that said you didn't have to pay to unions. This, though, because it's constitutional, applies across the entire country, which means in every state now you have the right not to pay the union dues if you don't want to.
Not only that, but one of the ramifications is that conservative groups can now really have much more of an influence on what happens with labor. Well,
it's interesting. You can look at it either way, half full, half empty, because part of the argument here, going back even before this, there was a provision that said, you can't charge people for political speech for unions, because unions on the other side are very politically active. They have been campaigning, they have been lobbying, and you always said you can always exclude your dues for that. But as a practical matter, this really does undercut the union's political clout, and that will, you're right, enhance conservative values. On the other hand, the conservatives said, the left got unfair support from unions because they had mandatory contributions.
Yeah, and even if you didn't agree with their positions, you were paying your dues, they were fighting, but you also then potentially benefited from any decision that was made collective bargaining wise.
Well, and that's the problem, of course. That's what the unions say. It's a free rider problem in economics terms. As a practical matter, you get the benefit of the collective bargaining even if you don't contribute to it. But it gives you some sense of what this might mean for public unions. The statistics are that in states that have a right to work provisions, about 17% of public employees belong to unions. In the states that didn't, where it was mandatory, it was nearly 50%. So that'll show you that there's a tendency for people not to want to pay their union dues if they don't have to.